Now, this week I reviewed Spider-Man, the original trilogy, the Amazing Spider-Man collection, and Civil War. But now today, we're going to be taking a sip out of Spider-Man Homecoming.
The world's changing, boys.
It's time we change too.
This is my chance to prove myself.
We have a Spanish quiz.
You gotta get better at this part of the job.
I don't understand. I'm intimidated.
Oh, hey, guys. My friends are up there.
Hey, where are you going? What are you hiding, Peter? I'm just kidding, I don't care. Bye.
Spider-Man Homecoming is the latest installment into the ever-growing Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's probably the 16th installment inside of its own universe. And it's the first cross-studio film that I have seen in a long time. Being produced by Sony Pictures Studios as well as Marvel Studios from Disney, this is the first solo outing for the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Spider-Man. So what's Spider-Man Homecoming all about? Well, this is the sort of an origin story, but it's not really an origin story. It's about Peter Parker. He's in high school. It feels like a real high school movie, and he's trying to figure out his place within the Avengers. And he's trying to get his phone call from Happy Hogan about, maybe another mission, and he's always waiting. And he wants to prove himself to be a good hero, to be proven in the eyes of his mentor, Tony Stark. And throughout the way, we get to know that there is a new villain in town named Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, who is developing weapons based off of the Chitauri sort of technology that we have seen from the first Avengers film. And to be honest, his motivation in this film, I'm not going to give too much away, but the Vulture's motivation in this film is actually really well done, and it may be one of my favorite Marvel villains to date, as well as one of my favorite Spider-Man villains to date ever since Doc Ock back in 2004. How does the rest of the film pay out? Well, the writing in this film is actually pretty well done. I have to commend that the writing for Peter Parker is pretty much the character of Peter Parker. And who they got to cast as Peter Parker, Tom Holland, he's pretty good in this one. To be honest, when I first saw him in Civil War, I didn't really think of anything really to say about him because I didn't really see him in a movie before then. But now that we have a movie now, I think he did a pretty good job. I think he's a perfect casting for Peter Parker. And as much as I like to say that, Tobey Maguire is one of my favorites, I tend to now think that Tom Holland is the new favorite. And he just captures the innocence and the naivete of the original character, the sort of the youth of the character, and he captures it. He does capture it. And also not to mention that Tony Stark is actually kind of an interesting character. From the trailers, it would seem that he would take up most of the movie, but apparently it doesn't. He actually has a little bit more of a supporting role, and he's kind of toned down just a bit. But there were maybe one or two times that I would say, yeah, I kind of think we need a little bit of Tony Stark in here, but it got better, actually. Tony Stark is probably a big character, and his sort of arc throughout the entire MCU is kind of laid out a little bit over here. See, back in Iron Man 3, he learns that the suit is, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have the suit at all. That's what he learns in Iron Man 3. So to have his line that was basically put out in the trailers to be like, oh, if you think you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it at all. That's a good line, and it really pulls his arc through the movie. And Spider-Man serves as his support throughout that story as well. Every single character in this film is either the support or the lead. There are times when the support characters become a lead, but then fall back towards the support. It's kind of weird that way, but I do think that it works to its advantage. And Marissa Tomei as, well, hot Aunt May kind of makes sense to me just a little bit, because it doesn't make sense that, and you have like an old, 60-year-old mom and dad that disappear for no reason, to have an aunt that's the same age as them. Like, how old were these people when they had Peter Parker? Like, the parents of Peter Parker. How old were they? They must have been 40. At that point, it doesn't make sense because of basic biology. I don't think you have a lot of, adults who have kids in their 40s. It doesn't make sense. So to have Marissa Tomei be roughly around 40 when Peter Parker's around 15 years old, it makes kind of some sense here. Now, obviously, in this film, there is a couple things they change around with a couple of the characters and even the Spider-Man suit in general. But to me, I'm kind of more willing to go with the flow with the changes, since, the other Marvel Studio films has changed a little bit of some of the other characters and stuff. That's just going to happen in these Marvel films from now on. They're going to change a couple things that may piss off some diehard fans, but to me, I thought it was okay. I like the fact that Spider-Man's suit was developed by Tony Stark. I honestly did, and there's even a nice little Easter egg towards the end of the film, and I'm not going to spoil that one. That's actually a pretty nice reveal. But this film works so well. Would I say that this is the best Spider-Man film? I'm still kind of cautious about saying it's the best because, well, Spider-Man 2 is still one that takes place in my heart. It's one that I grew up with. And it still stays with me to this day. It has a lot of deeper thematic elements than I realized back when I was a kid. Here, there's not really too much deeper levels here, but I still enjoyed it. I think it's a fun, enjoyable film with some great characters, some great acting, some good dialogue between Michael Keaton and Peter Parker in the middle and the end of the movie, and it's really well done. I like the Vulture suit. The Vulture suit's pretty mechanical, and I like how his character and his salvage crew are a bunch of vultures. They're a bunch of scavengers, and I really like that aspect. And it really brings in the whole Vulture aspect to the Vulture instead of making him just like a regular bank robber that robs banks. I mean, it does bring out that character. And granted, it is a bit on the nose, but it works. It really does work. As far as negatives go, I don't really have a lot of negatives, actually. This film is really damn good, and I had a good time watching it with my best friend, and he's sitting right next to me, and he's just typing away on his computer. Which I'm not going to move the camera at all to show him, because he doesn't like being on camera. Well, okay, I guess you get a hand. He's just the man behind the computer. He's the man sitting in the chair, if you ever get that reference when you go see the movie. But, but anyways, I had a fun time watching it. I don't think it's the best, but I do think it's really close to being one of the best Spider-Man films. And seeing how this is the first outing for Spider-Man, I think Marvel knocked it out of the park. Granted, it is also a Sony production, and there's going to be some form of product placement. I didn't really see a lot of product placement in this film until, the middle of the movie when they go to the decathlon, which I won't spoil what all the stuff is there either. But it's good. I think it's good. I do have to say, though, that it takes a little bit of a while to get to the actual Spider-Man part. It does. But when it does, it actually is good. They have this nice setup at the beginning for the Vulture, and then the credits, and then we get to Peter Parker, which is pretty cool. And his little short film that's between the credits and, the scene we see in the trailers with Tony Stark and Peter Parker, that's a really fun thing. It almost caused my mom to almost walk out of the theater because she thought it was going to be like the found footage type thing. And it's like, no, it's not going to be found footage. But yeah, all in all, I enjoyed it. Despite a couple flaws with some of the pacing and maybe a couple of things with the characters and whatnot, I still enjoy it. It's a good Marvel film. If you're looking for something to watch this weekend that is better than Despicable Me 3 or anything else, choose this movie. Choose Spider-Man Homecoming. And for that, I'm going to give Spider-Man Homecoming an A-. It was a good film, and I don't think it's a terrible film, like some people are saying. I don't think it's a standout, humongously great film, like some people think. But I think it's a good film. You know, I don't think it's the greatest. I think it's good. So check back next week for my War for the Planet of the Apes review, as well as my Rise for the Planet of the Apes and Dawn for the Planet of the Apes reviews, because we're gonna get a bunch of apes in this room. That was a bad joke. That was a terrible joke. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.